Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and back to another video. So today I was scrolling through my timeline on YouTube and I happened to come across Blaire White, who posted a video, I believe a couple of days ago, entitled I went to therapy to figure out why I'm transgender. And that really stood out to me because, as we know, Blaire White is a transgendered person and Blaire White happens to be conservative. And we know that those two things cannot coexist in the world today when it comes to the left, right? Their head explodes. When somebody isn't supposed to be conservative or isn't supposed to be on the right, they lose their minds. They do it with me all the time. So I'm sure Blaire White gets it probably 10 times worse because Blaire is trans. So this title just intrigued me. I have not seen the video. I don't know the details of it. I'm assuming it's going to be an emotional one because of the thumbnail, but I am interested to see what transpires in this video. Blaire comes across to me as a very open-minded person who doesn't really fall for the cult-like mentality when it comes to the gender cult and their mob mentality, which is why so many on the left absolutely hate Blaire White. So with that being said, let's watch this video together, analyze it, and discuss it.
Me being trans is probably a trauma response.
That's interesting.
And it's not politically correct to say, don't care. And then my dad.
He was abusive? Physically?
Yeah.
Maybe he needed to die so you could be safe. I'm not gonna let anyone hurt you. You're safe. I got you.
Why is that making me cry?
Wow, it's gonna be deep.
Have you done any therapy before?
Not in my adult life recently.
Right.
Like scattered throughout my life, my parents took me to a therapist, or my mom did, when I was young. Like observed a lot of, I guess now that I'm thinking of it, really like bad issues I was having as a kid.
What issues?
I recently talked to her on the phone and she was we're kind of opening up about the past in my childhood now because I had a super bad upbringing. And I'm finally in the space to kind of like look at it. So now I'm more interested in doing therapy and like learning. I'm on neuroscience a lot lately, like learning about how the brain works, learning about repressed memories, which I've also experienced recently. And just kind of understanding the past to get a better grip on the present.
Yep.
So, yeah.
When you say you had you had bad childhood?
Oh, yeah.
What was going on in the house?
A lot. Oh my God. So.
You grew up in Northern California, a small town?
Very small town, Northern California.
Brothers, sisters?
I had a half brother. And my mom and my dad and 2 dogs. So like super like normal nuclear family type deal. But, you know, I was definitely born into a lot of trauma from them, like what they had from their lives before me.
Sure.
And I definitely had no allies growing up, let's put it that way.
Right.
I was like one bitch against the world. One bitch army.
So is there any meaning that you've made of it, or just over stress?
Definitely there's a lot to understand about what got me here, which is like honestly such a beautiful life. As much as I can harp on like the negative things I went through as a kid, like I love my life now. I've really become the exact person that like childhood me needed, like in many ways. I've actually corrected a lot of patterns I was born into from my parents and my family.
Did you feel alone in your family?
Super.
And alone in your town, I guess? I mean, you're obviously, you're different from a very young age.
Yeah, and everyone saw it, even before me, actually.
Everyone saw it.
Yeah.
That must have been, how was that?
It was twofold. It was painful because I endured a lot of bullying, but also I wouldn't take it back for the world because I learned so much from it. And I know that people can feel a certain way about hearing that. I'm not saying kids should be bullied, especially not necessarily the way I was, which was like relentless, you know, getting called in preschool, which is like, I didn't know the word. You know what I mean? It just happened. I was like, what is that? So, you know.
Because you were effeminate at a...
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
Oh yeah, I was there.
You were there.
Basically out the womb. That's what my parents said.
That's amazing. And how did your parents respond to that?
Well, it was bizarre. Like my mom was totally fine with it. And then my dad
Okay, before we get into the dad, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot to unpack there. I definitely relate when Blaire is talking about being a kid and being bullied and being attacked verbally constantly, because I went through the same thing. I started getting bullied, I think, in first grade is when it started for me. I remember being in elementary school and being picked on and being ostracized by the other kids, particularly the male kids, because I wasn't super masculine in the first grade. In the first grade, which is crazy because it's right after kindergarten and it already started. My entire elementary school experience is that of just horror. I hated school so much. And I went through my struggles alone, just like Blaire. Like, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my parents. I didn't want anybody to know because I didn't want to be perceived as weak. And I didn't want to, and I'm just an introvert by nature. So I'm the kind of person, even at that age, the way that I handle stress and I handle situations that are uncomfortable is I just shut down as far as what's happening around me, and I just stay focused on what I need to do, and I try to block out, you know, the hate or the anger or the bullying. But I went through relentless bullying from first grade all the way to fifth grade, and then from first grade to fourth grade, which was elementary, and then I transferred over to junior high school, and it got even worse. So from fifth to eighth was like hell. Absolutely hated school every single day. My stomach would turn when I had to go to school, and my family never knew. In fact, every first day of school, I remember crying and being devastated because I enjoyed the summer because I didn't have to go to school. And then the first day of class, I always would have a panic attack and cry. And my family never knew why. They're like, why are you crying? And they didn't understand because I didn't tell them. But I absolutely hated going to school because of the relentless bullying. And it made me feel so alone. And it makes you feel like you are something different. You are an other. No matter how hard you try, you will always be an other because of how your peers are treating you. And when you're in school, that's your world. That's your whole social world, you know? Like, your whole social interactions, 90% of it when you're a kid is at school. It's not in the house. It's not in the neighborhood. It's in school because you are in school for about 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So you're probably spending more time with your classmates than you are with your family when you're growing up. So if you're having a tough time and you're being bullied, feels like the end of the world. It's just the worst feeling in the world. And I remember feeling completely alone by myself, having to process things by myself. And that does affect you when you're young and you don't have people around you that have your back. You really don't. And it's like the world is against you. The world is against you. So I relate to that. But I also feel as though I went through all of that craziness and the horror of being bullied, but it made me a really strong person today. Which is the irony of it all, right? Because here I am today on this large platform on YouTube, which I never expected to ever happen to me. I have 231,000 people who follow me by choice. Very large platform, a lot of opinions coming my way, both negative and positive. But I feel like because I had the training that I didn't ask for as a kid being bullied, it strengthened me today to deal with the bullies online that may come after me. Regardless of what it's for, people are always going to come after you, right? And I just feel like had I not gone through what I went through as a kid and learning how to block out the hate and just focus on what I need to focus on, as horrible as that is, because no kid should have to do that, but that made me a very strong person today. I have very thick skin today because of what I went through in my past and never really understanding why. Like, why am I going through this? Why am I always being picked on? Why am I treated differently than other people? But I feel like maybe my path was already laid out for me, and you know, God knew, hey, you're gonna be on a platform one day, you're gonna have an audience one day, and you have to have thick skin to deal with that type of platform. You can't be somebody who's affected by words because you won't survive. So I'm not saying that I'm happy I went through that because that was horrendous and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I survived it. I'm a stronger person because of it, and maybe I'll do a video one day going into detail about how I was bullied and how I got to do that, because it was a really tough time in my life for many years, and it definitely affected me today, but I don't let that pull me down today, you know? I'm a strong person in spite of what I went through. So I definitely relate when Blaire is talking about the trauma of being bullied and then having to overcome that and using that past to strengthen you today. Again, no kid should ever have to go through that or deal with that type of lesson, but children can be really, really evil. They really can be. They can be angels at home and demons at school. So yeah. I definitely relate to that part.
I don't want to necessarily say everything that he was, because I haven't been open about that with anyone on camera or even in real life yet. But he was, you know, a really bad person, you know, a really dark, damaged person that passed a lot of his darkness into me. So
was that just in his energy, or was he acting out on that?
Actions.
He was abusive physically?
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily say exactly what form of abuse, but like, the kind that will give you trauma.
Right.
For sure. And maybe come up in repressed memories when you're 30, which I learned is
Wow.
actually very common.
Repressed memories.
Well, that it can happen that late.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I
For
never knew
sure.
that, I had like a narrative once I escaped my hometown and my family.
Escaped. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a narrative that once I escaped, I was good. I didn't have any problems, I'm the first entrepreneur in my family. I'm the first self-made person. I'm the first person to move out of my hometown, really, or that little area at least, and to break a lot of the curses that they had, like in patterns.
Yeah.
So I had this narrative in my head that I'm good. I'm the only good one in my family.
Right.
And in some ways I am, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of damage that I'm realizing is there, so now I'm fixing it.
Interesting. So are you angry at all about, I mean, I guess your mom, maybe your mom, but your dad, he was abusive and...
Him, I don't have any grace for. I don't really know.
Why?
Just because of the specific type of monster he was.
You
I don't really know.
forgive him?
No.
Yeah.
No. And I also don't relate to the people who are like, forgiving's about you. It's like, is it? I mean, people say it, so maybe you really feel that way, but
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in healing whatever damage he did.
Right.
Which to me, that's making it about me. That's prioritizing myself.
Yeah.
I don't need to just say some mantra of like, I forgive him because it's about him and not me.
Right.
That's weird to me.
Interesting. Makes sense. It makes sense that for Blaire White, there is a disconnect with the dad or the father. And it makes sense that maybe in some way, not that I'm a psychologist in any way, shape, or form, I'm just watching this from afar and just coming up with my own kind of fill in the blanks. It would make sense that somebody who is transgender, who does not want to be the sex that they were born as, also had issues with the same-sex parent, because we know that according to psychiatrists and psychologists, the parent that has the most influence on a child growing up tends to be the same-sex parent, because that's who you look up to as far as what you're supposed to be, right? So little girls see their moms and they're like, that's the first expression and example of what a woman is when they see their mom. And for little boys, their dad is the first expression of what a man is and what a father is. And when there's a disconnect between a son and his father, there can become a level of resentment that one grows and has, not just for the dad, but just for men in general, or for males and masculinity and what it means to be a man. Those things, if it's missing in the home and there's a disconnect or abuse going on with same-sex parent, physical, emotional, what have you, I can see the correlation of how for Blaire that can overlap to, I can't stand my father, I don't like males, I don't like that male energy, I don't like myself. Like it kind of correlates. Not all the time. I'm not saying this is the case for every person who's trans, because obviously everyone has different upbringings, everyone has different experiences, and not everyone is the same. But this is about Blaire White, right? And their particular past and struggles and how they got from there to here. And so just as a fly on the wall, that stands out to me. That really does. And it makes sense. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Not just who are trans, but people who have issues, people that have daddy issues or mommy issues. It always overlaps into adulthood and affects how they view themselves. And sometimes it goes so deep that a person doesn't even like the sex that they're born as or their gender, because it relates too much to that parent that they did not get along with, or that parent who abused them, or that parent who they still have resentment for. It definitely, there's a correlation there, in my opinion, a correlation. But again, not a doctor, just watching as an analyst and as a fly in the wall.
Well, I guess you haven't done a lot of therapy, so you don't really know, but I don't know if you intuit, like, what was the meaning you made of that, like the child, that your father's abusive towards you? Because the father is a very powerful figure in our lives as an archetype. And if we're being abused by the father and he's not there for us, creating safety, that's really the primary job of the father. Do you have any sense of like the meaning you made of that?
No, because, again, it's kind of twofold to answer.
Like he let you down.
Oh, for sure. Worse than that,
Worse
just
than
like
that.
Failure, flop, monster, evil. But, a lot of the actions on his part were actually buried deep down in my psyche. So they didn't start coming up until about 29, 30. So in one way, I didn't make any sense of it. But then also, what's really fascinating about that is like my body always knew that he was like a demon. Like, not in the literal sense, but, you know, bad for me to be around dark, like I said. Because I remember, you know, the only real memories I have of him are always hating him, but not knowing why.
You always hated him.
Yeah, he'd walk in the room and I would tell him, like, you know, get the fuck away from me for no reason, completely unwarranted. And in fact, the last thing I ever said to him, this is gonna sound crazy, is I hope you get cancer and die, you cunt. I was like 17 or 18. And it was
Good Lord.
trash out. And I just said that from the top of the stairs, and he looked at me with basically a knowledge that he deserved it. Like, he didn't even fight back, which was interesting.
He knew.
I think, I believe. And then, this is actually the crazy part, 2 weeks later he got cancer and died. Out of nowhere, full body cancer.
Wow.
So, I don't know what that means, but I said that to say that I never had a logical, concrete reason as a kid to hate him, but I always knew I did.
Well, you had logical.
Okay, I gotta cut in just for a second because that, wow. I had no idea that Blaire's father passed away from cancer, which is truly sad. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And I know Blaire said earlier, like, you don't need to forgive somebody because it's not about them, it's about you. And I understand the mentality of why, if you're still resentful, you would feel that way. However, I think that there is something to letting go of the power that somebody has over you when they've abused you or did you wrong or you were resentful for years. There is a sense of freedom for yourself when you say, you know what, I forgive you, I want to move on. Remember, forgiving somebody doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to let them come back into your life, that there aren't going to be any boundaries, that they get to just come back in without any sense of responsibility. Forgiveness just means I'm letting go of the power that you once had over me for X amount of years. And in order to do that, I need to no longer see you as the demon and let go of that stuff. Not even think about it anymore. Because when you're still angry, regardless of how you feel, what you say, when you are still angry at a person, they do have control over your life. And you will find yourself reverting back to those old memories and to what they said, what they did. You're still going to be pissed off. You're still going to project that anger onto other people and other relationships because you haven't let that go. And the moment you say, I forgive you and I'm moving on, it is life-changing for a lot of people because you're literally saying, I am no longer allowing you access into my mind. I'm no longer allowing you access to dictate how I move through life. You no longer have control. I'm taking back control. I'm taking the wheel. Thanks. To me, that's what forgiveness means. That's what forgiving somebody means. No longer letting them control your present. And it's clear just from watching this that Blaire has a lot of issues, underlying issues with their father, which is interesting because you just heard Blaire say, I don't even know why I had resentment. I don't even know why I was so angry. He would ask me to take out the trash and I would just lash out. Like, something must have happened. Maybe you buried something deep down, you don't remember. I don't know what it is, but you don't have that type of hate for a parent without there being something that happened to create that type of resentment, you know, like it just doesn't make any sense. And it also, what kind of popped up to me is when the therapist said, you know, your dad is supposed to protect you. Your father's job is to protect you. And if you feel that failed, that correlates to everything else in your life. And I thought, wow, that's interesting because you don't really think about that, but it is true, right? As far as our social structure, the mom is a nurturer and the dad is a protector. That's just how nuclear families are supposed to coexist, or how we were told that they're supposed to exist. And so when one of those things is missing, whether it be the mom who's not nurturing or a dad who's not protecting, that definitely is going to affect how you see the world as you become an adult. And if your protector never protected you, you're always going to feel like you have to be on guard all the time, which can explain why Blaire has a wall up sometimes and has this sort of like tough exterior. That could just be a defense mechanism because Blaire never felt protected as a kid and probably still doesn't feel protected as an adult because the protector, i.e. the dad, that part was missing for some reason. That's crazy to still have that kind of resentment for a parent that passed away of cancer. Like, oh my God, I can't, like, I'm not perfect. I don't come from a perfect family, but I actually made the conscious decision many years ago to forgive the people in my life that needed forgiveness in order for me to move on with my life. Because there were things that I had, there were issues that I had growing up. There definitely were problems. There was dysfunction. But I made a conscious decision early on in my life, I want to say in my early 20s, to not take that with me. And that was the best thing I could have done for myself because it allowed me to love in a deeper way and also move through life in a healthier way. If I still had the same anger that I had when I was a teenager, I think I would be a miserable person today. Not to say that Blaire is miserable because that's their life. But I know for me, forgiveness was key for me to move forward. Even the people that bullied me, I forgave them. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody who bullied me in junior high school, who found me on Facebook. And we had a conversation many years ago, and they actually apologized for everything. And I had held resentment towards that person for a long time. And when they said, I'm so sorry for how I treated you, it was like that weight was lifted off of me. And saying, you know what, I forgive you, it's okay, was like the biggest healing for myself. Because yes, it wasn't really about them, it was about me. It was about the baggage that I was still holding on, that I was allowing them to still have on my back. And when I let that go, it really freed me. It really did. So I guess 2 different perspectives on why forgiveness, or how you can view forgiveness. From Blaire's perspective, forgiveness is about the other person, which is why Blaire's like, I'm not forgiving my dad. But really, it's not. It really is about you. Because at the end of the day, you are the one that lives with that resentment, not the person that did you wrong. They're living their life, not even thinking about you. But here you are, day after day, living in anger and bitterness over somebody who still is controlling your life.
Didn't actually growing up remember what he had done to me specifically. And it's a very specific thing he did. So I just always still felt the energy of what that action was. And it made me hate him forever. And he was very deserving of it. So.
Interesting. What, you know, he did something to you that was dark and scary and painful.
For sure.
And you now live with that, and you're becoming aware that that's inside you, the impact of that, and it's unresolved, and it's having an impact on your life today. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's had a huge impact now that I have more clarity on the entirety of my life. But it was only once those memories came up again that I could kind of see that, oh, that's why I do that. That's why my brain works like that. That's why I have this view of this thing that is whatever, you know?
Yeah.
You know.
Is it in you? Do you think there's it's in you, that darkness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of.
Does it scare you?
No.
No?
Because
Do you know it? Mm-hmm. You sure?
Mm-hmm. Maybe not fully, because I'm always learning. But But I know that, you know, I, like everyone, is capable of good and evil.
Right.
And
of course,
it's in me, but, you know, like anything.
Well, it's in all of us.
Yeah. You just learn how to hone it and use it for good. I feel like you either heal it or you spread it. Mm-hmm. You heal it or you lash out at the world.
Right.
And I've lashed out at the world at certain times.
Right.
You know, one of the criticisms of me, and it's correct, used to be a lot more, but it's still sometimes correct, is that I get a little angry. You know, online, like my tone of voice sometimes will be very angry, which is passion and which is fire, but also is anger.
And it just makes me think of your father and the last thing you said to him. What you know? I hope you die of cancer, you cunt.
I said, I hope you fucking get cancer and die, you fucking cunt.
Right.
Which is crazy.
It's a curse.
But then I always think about, like, how crazy is it that he really got cancer and died 2 weeks later? Maybe 3, but it was within the month.
Is there some place inside you where, maybe it's irrational, where you feel like you killed him? Like you're responsible for it? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
I think it goes back to, like, the power that you either learn how to hone it and use it for good. Because if I could somehow energetically do that, let's just say I did, that means I can do a lot of energetic good as well.
That's right.
Like, I can heal people.
But but how do you feel about the idea? I hear you.
The idea.
Like, well, just if I said this thing and then my father got cancer and died, and you could very easily see how the mind would say, did I, somehow I created that, or I put a curse on him.
Yeah.
And so on some level, like, in that framework, it's like you killed your father. Mm-hmm. And how do you feel, if we stay in that framework, how do you feel about the fact that you killed your father? Be honest.
Yeah, I don't feel guilt.
You don't feel guilt.
Maybe he
deserved to die.
Right.
Maybe he needed to die so you could be safe.
Or just, that was his justice, that was his karma,
right.
That was what, you know, maybe, for me to expand into everything that I needed to be, his job was done, even if his job was to cause the trauma that did it, right? Like, that was his path in life, was to lay the framework for his child to become everything that I've become and I'm going to become. When I figured out
There definitely is a serious disconnect that I'm sensing with Blaire, especially when a therapist asks, like, okay, so how do you feel? Like, let's say theoretically that you did kill your father or that your words caused his death 3 weeks later of cancer. How does that make you feel? Or do you, first of all, do you see that there is a correlation there or that there could be? And the fact that Blaire is like, yeah, I'm a little bit taken back by that. And the fact that Blaire is able to compartmentalize those thoughts as if it's something other, it's like, yeah, that thing over there, okay, we could talk about it, that's your dad. So I don't know what the dad did. I don't know. I can only imagine it must have been really, really dark and really, really horrible for a child to wish death on a parent. The death happened and you don't care, and X amount of years later you're able to talk about it as though you're talking about how the sky is blue and water is wet. Like, no feelings, no emotions. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but there definitely seems to be some real underlying issues there that I think are deeper than Blaire even realizes, because regardless of the anger that you have for your dad or for any parent, I can't imagine me as an adult like losing one of my parents and having that type of reaction. But again, I wasn't abused in the same way that clearly Blaire was, so I don't know what the abuse was. I don't know if it was sexual, if it was physical, if it was emotional, if it was, I don't know. It must have been bad enough to have caused this, but I still think it's sad to watch. It's very sad to see someone so disconnected from their emotions that they can talk about a parent's death and it be like you're talking about going to the movies next Sunday. It's like, yeah, he died. I probably killed him. Wow. Not judging, just as an observation. That's kind of telling. I guess it makes me feel in a way, and no shade on Blaire, but it makes me feel in a way kind of blessed in my life that I haven't had to deal with that kind of pain or that type of trauma, because I dealt with some trauma, and I've definitely dealt with dysfunction, and I've dealt with issues and things that I have to work through, that I'm still working through as an adult, but nothing that deep to where I would ever wish death on my family members, and to where I wouldn't care about their death if I was talking about it in past tense. Like, I couldn't imagine. Could not imagine. So it's really sad. Very, very sad, actually.
about the trans thing, and by figured out, I mean like looked within, made the decision, was comfortable with it, went on. I was like, okay, well then there's nothing else wrong with me. That was the thing that was always wrong with me. Clearly, because that's such a big thing. No one even goes through that shit, especially back then. Now everyone wants to. But when I transitioned, no one even, I never knew anyone like that. Never really heard of it. So I was like, okay, then that's my big problem in life. I'll move on now.
Right. It's solved.
Yeah, now I see that like, that was probably a trauma response. Me being trans is probably a trauma response.
That's interesting.
And it's not politically correct to say, don't care. That's not, within the realm of what people think is acceptable to say. And some of their reasoning for that, I understand. I don't think that that is the case for every person who is trans. I don't think that's the case for every LGBT person. And it may not be the full explanation for why I'm trans in myself, but to deny that it's part of the equation, I just think is ignorant in my own case.
Right. When did you...
Wow. I gotta applaud Blaire for saying that, because they're right. When it comes to the transgendered issue, it's almost like you can't admit that maybe trauma played a role in why a person who was born a male wants to be a female, or vice versa, or why a person doesn't even want to be any gender, right? To think that maybe something could have happened that is overlapping their life today and is explaining why, or explains why they feel the way that they do. To ask that question is, in today's world, unfortunately, politically incorrect. You can't do it. Doctors no longer inquire for the why when it comes to transgender issues. Doctors are there today to affirm, to put a Band-Aid on a wound and say, whatever you want to be is what you are. Let's get you treatment. That's not treatment. Doctors used to have an oath that said do no harm, and watching children being mutilated, watching children socially transitioning, watching children pretty much deciding their own fate, and the adults who are supposed to be protecting them, i.e. the parents and the doctors, just co-signing what that child wants in that moment, not thinking about the full-fledged future, not thinking about the why, how did we get here, what happened, is insane to me. So kudos to Blaire for, as a well-known trans person, stating, I think my transness has a lot to do with my trauma. It's a trauma response. The reason why it's uncommon to say that is because then it no longer puts being transgendered on this pedestal that it is today, right? People aspire nowadays to be transgender, which is weird to me because transgenderism is gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria is a condition. It used to be called a mental condition. No longer can we say that because it's not politically incorrect, but that's what it is. Right? It's something that is uncommon. It's something that is rare for a reason. It's a defect. That has to come from some place. I'm sorry, there's always a reason. There's always some type of parallel. And we should be able to have that conversation. And it's sad that in today's world, medical professionals don't want to have that conversation because being trans and gender affirming care has become a money-making machine for so many facilities, for so many providers, for so many doctors. It's no longer about figuring out the why and treating that. Is now just about affirming a person's feelings and emotions in that moment. Because affirming equals dollar signs. It is what it is. Whew, that was deep. That was deep. But again, kudos to Blaire for even saying that because you're not supposed to say that.
Right. When did you come to that realization that it was, at least some aspect of it was a trauma response?
Like in the last year or so, like I started really thinking about it and I'm like, really interesting how I escaped my hometown, escaped my family, moved away, changed my name, changed my physical appearance in just about every way I possibly could. I mean, I look nothing like I look. It's actually scary how different I look, like shapeshifter type stuff. And I don't think that's normal, like, and even less normal than like a regular abnormal sense, because like abnormal is like not good or bad, it just deviates from normal. But for me, I was like, no, there was like something unspoken about that I'm not admitting to myself. Like, was that me running away from my past? And I think in part, for sure.
Right. Well, also, when our childhood is really, really scary, we don't want to be in our bodies. Like, we don't want to be in our actual bodies because it's not safe to be in our bodies. And we have all kinds of ways that we leave. And so maybe there was something about you not wanting to be in your actual body, or you wanted to change.
Sorry guys, I gotta cut in because that right there is the mic drop right there, right? Like, you want so badly to escape yourself, even your physical body, that you would change your physical body just to escape, because the trauma for Blaire was when Blaire was a boy, when Blaire lived as a boy. And so whatever trauma boy Blaire went through, escaping that trauma was literally leaving the boy body behind. The face, the hair, the features, everything. Anything male related, leave it behind and be something else just to escape that body and that trauma and the abuse. Not only from, I'm sure, Blaire's dad, but from society as a whole as a gay boy. Makes 1000% sense. It really does. And I think a lot of trans people, in my opinion, a lot of trans people are just gay people who dealt with homophobia their entire life, that the way to escape the homophobia is by becoming the opposite sex. Because think about it, right? If you're somebody who, in Blaire's case, was a boy who was bullied every single day for being gay or for being feminine, and being gay was bad, right? Being feminine was bad because you're a boy. The way to escape that is by just switching your gender, because now Blaire is a straight girl, right? And so as far as the box that Blaire is now in, it now coincides with female femininity. If you didn't know Blaire, you would think Blaire was a natural born woman. You wouldn't know that Blaire was trans because Blaire is convincingly very female, right? A way to escape the pain of homophobia from others and that abuse that one has to deal with is to become the opposite sex. Because if you're the opposite sex, you're now considered normal, because now you're living your life as a female who is straight, who likes boys. So you no longer, by definition, you no longer are a gay male because you're living your life as a straight female. Does that make sense? It's like you're trying to escape the trauma and the social barriers by changing your gender. Now you get to change how people view you if they don't know your past. That makes sense. I need to escape my body. I need to escape my trauma. I need to physically get out of this body in order to survive. Not that I didn't already know that or kind of have that correlation, but to hear it in this sense, it just brings it all together. And it's like, wow. And I definitely relate. I'm not trans, like I never transitioned, but growing up, I definitely wondered, should I be another gender? 1000%, because I dealt with that type of abuse my entire life. And I dealt with that type of anger from other people just for me being me. It angered people who are my peers, you know, and I was abused in such a harsh way that I did want to escape my life, escape my body without killing myself. And so the next best thing was just changing my gender, because then I'll be accepted. I can fool people and just be that. Like, I know that mindset. I know it. That's why I talk about this issue so much, because I understand it. Thankfully, I did not jump, you know, and do that and change my life in a drastic way that way, because I think I would have regretted it. Because really, I wasn't dealing with the underlying issue, which was just acceptance and loving myself. When you don't love yourself, you want to change yourself emotionally, mentally, and yes, physically. So I get it. I speak from experience. So I understand, and I get it. When he said that, it was like light bulb. Ding. I'm gonna end the video here, and I'm probably gonna do a 2-part, because this is a very long session that Blaire did. It's like 31 minutes, and I don't want this video to go over an hour. So I'm gonna cut it here at the 14-minute mark, and let me know in the comments down below if you guys would like me to do a part 2 and do the remainder of this session, because I'm sure it probably gets even deeper. I'm not gonna watch it. I'll wait for your guys' response, and if you guys want me to do a part 2, I will film a part 2 and release that probably sometime next week. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of this video so far. Do you relate to what Blaire is saying? Do you understand, you know, the path that they took? Do you see it? Does it make sense? And if you guys enjoy my content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. I'm available on all social media platforms under CurlyBoyChuck. Until next time.